Hi everybody, welcome to week 7 of Parenting Inside Out. This week we're going to be discussing how to nurture your child's temperament and how to care for them well through their love language. Before we jump into our content, I want you to take a second and think about any victories that you may have had this week. Remember, nothing is too small to be celebrated. You can also reflect on anything that you were able to implement from our previous lesson last week or ones earlier that we've discussed. Some takeaway messages for this lesson include: all people have behavior tendencies or temperament traits that they are born with or develop very early in life. There is no perfect temperament. Each individual has a unique mix of traits that presents both natural abilities as well as areas where skill development is needed. Temperament is yet one more piece of the puzzle that makes up who your child is and how he or she interacts with the world around them. You can now take a second to write down a learning goal for today. Some sample ones include: I'd like to learn ways to encourage my challenging child who says no to things before even trying them. Or, I'd like to learn more about each type of temperament to understand how I can support my child. Now I'd like you to think about your kids, if you have more than one child, and think about if you've been surprised at how different they are from each other. Take a minute and write down some differences that you've noticed between your children. Sometimes our first baby is regular in their sleep and wake patterns, has no trouble feeding, and is generally easygoing. We tend to think that we are marvelous parents as a result. Then we have another child, and that child is hard to calm, doesn't sleep regularly, cries a lot, and is generally fussy. Suddenly, we feel as if we aren't such good parents after all. Is it our parenting, or is it something else? Children, even children in the same family, or children at the same developmental age, are different from each other. Remember the idea of our children as a set of puzzle pieces, with each piece contributing to a set of qualities or characteristics that shapes who they are and how they behave. Temperament is another piece of this puzzle. Temperament is the tendency to respond in a particular way to the world around you. Temperamental characteristics are there from birth and tend to stay pretty similar throughout life. We're now going to learn about 10 temperament traits and then use that information to identify our own temperament. Temperament can be described as a person's early, natural, and most preferred way of responding to the world around them. Temperament is made up of the amount of each one of the temperament traits that we have. Our unique mix of temperament traits determines our basic personality. There is no preferred or ideal temperament. All traits come with natural abilities. As parents, we can encourage and celebrate those abilities in our own children, while helping them to develop the skills that don't come quite so naturally to them. While no temperament is better or worse than any other temperament, some traits can be more challenging than others for parents, and even for the person who has those traits. We can learn ways to balance the challenging traits by managing the environment and through skill development. You can now turn in your yellow workbook to worksheet 7.1.1. It's titled Temperament Traits. On this worksheet, you're going to see a list of 10 traits. It's 3 pages in all. Under each trait is a description of what that trait means or what that trait could look like in a person. You're going to rate yourself on each trait and figure out, do you fall in the low category of that or on the higher end of the spectrum, or are you somewhere in the middle? So I'm going to go through each one of these traits, and as I'm reading through them, you can mark on the spectrum where you feel like you fall. For some people, you might think in certain situations I'm this way, or in other situations I act this way. Just do the best you can to answer it to the best of your ability. As you can see, as I marked with that yellow mark right there, I marked that I might be low in first response to something. You might find yourself higher or somewhere in the middle. So as I'm reading, go through and mark for yourself where you find yourself falling in each of these temperament traits. Number 1 is first response. This is defined as the way a person first responds to a new idea, person, or suggestion. People who score high on the first response like to try new things. They are outgoing. They are not afraid, even in situations that might be dangerous. People who score low on first response need more time to get used to a new situation, idea, or people. They take longer to join in than those with a high first response. Next is activity level. This describes how active a person is. Those with a high activity level have a hard time sitting quietly for long periods of time. They often tap their fingers, pace, doodle, or fiddle with objects. They learn best when using their bodies. People with a low activity level can sit for long periods of time and have less need for activity. Next, we have mood. This describes a person's basic outlook on life. Those with a low mood tend to see the serious side of things, worry more, and see all the things that can go wrong in a situation. They may often expect the worst to happen. People who have a high mood tend to see things in a more positive light. They worry less, see the positives, and expect the best to happen. But they may miss the negatives in a situation and tend to study things less than those with a low mood. You can now flip over to the next page, and we're going to move on to adaptability. This describes how easily a person adapts to changes in routines or situations. People with high adaptability like change and can get bored with the same old routine. Very adaptable people may give in to peer pressure. People with low adaptability don't like change. They need more time to get used to changes in schedule or situations. Sometimes they can get locked into what they are doing, even if a change would be helpful. People who aren't highly adaptable can be stubborn. Next, we have emotional intensity. This describes how a person responds to situations in their life. People with high emotional intensity feel things very strongly. They laugh loudly and show their unhappiness with energy. People with low emotional intensity have milder emotional reactions and may not say as much when they do share their feelings. Next, we have physical sensitivity. This describes how sensitive a person is to heat and cold, noise, pain, and things like scratchy clothes. People who have high physical sensitivity are bothered by loud noises, uncomfortable shoes, or being very hot or cold. They have a hard time with pain. People who are physically sensitive often have very good senses of smell or hearing. People who have low physical sensitivity don't mind loud noises, hot or cold temperatures, or things that are uncomfortable, but they can miss things going on around them because they just don't notice. Next is emotional sensitivity. This describes how much a person notices their own feelings or the feelings of others. People with a high emotional sensitivity feel empathy for others. They might cry at movies, have their feelings hurt frequently, or feel other people's feelings strongly. They may also tend to be people pleasers, to worry a lot, and to be afraid of making mistakes. People with low emotional sensitivity are less bothered by their own and others' emotions. They don't let their feelings get hurt and are more objective, but they can be less in tune with their feelings and the feelings of others. On the next page, we have distractibility. This describes how much a person notices people and things around them. People with high distractibility may not be able to pay attention for very long. They get easily distracted by what is going on around them. They often notice things others miss, but they have a hard time focusing when there is a lot going on around them. People with low distractibility can focus on a task and can pay attention longer, but they may miss out on things going on around them because they are absorbed in their own world. Next, we have persistence. This describes how likely a person is to stick with something once they have started it. People who are very persistent do not get easily frustrated or sidetracked. They stick with things even when they are challenging. They are sometimes naggers and don't know when to give up on something that isn't very important. People with low persistence get easily frustrated and give up on very challenging tasks. They may demand help from others and may have a hard time learning to do things for themselves. Last, we have regularity. This describes how regular a person is with body functions such as eating, sleeping, and going to the bathroom. People with high regularity need to eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom on a regular schedule. People with low regularity can eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom at different times of the day. Children who aren't highly regular may have a hard time being potty trained. They may not be hungry at meal times, or they may fight their parents at bedtime because they aren't tired. For some of these traits, it may be hard to identify for yourself where you fall. Feel free to pause this video and take as much time as you need to finish filling out these scales. We're now going to watch a video that discusses some of the temperament traits in more detail. Some of the names are slightly different than the ones referenced in our workbook, but the same general ideas apply. Let's take a look, and as you're watching, think about any that might resonate with your own children.
The 9 traits.
Child more of an introvert? Are you a nighthawk, while your child is an early riser? Temperament is a part of our inherited makeup, and it influences our behavior in our relationships with our children, our partner, and others. When parents understand their temperament traits and those of their child, everyone can benefit. This clip will introduce the concept of temperament, describe the different temperament traits, and identify the importance of the goodness of fit between you and your child's temperament.
Hello, I'm Carol Krill-Russell. I'm an advisor to Invest in Kids on parenting and child development. I'm going to talk today about temperament, and I'm very excited to do this because I think knowing about temperament helps parents be more effective parents, more than almost anything else you can learn about. So temperament is actually composed of what we call 9 emotional building blocks, and they're called traits, and they affect how you respond to life. I'll just mention them briefly, and we'll go into them in detail a bit later on. But the 9 traits are sensitivity, activity, emotional intensity, rhythm or regularity, adaptability, mood or positivity, approach, withdrawal, persistence, and distractibility. Why are these traits important? Well, we're born with them. We see them beginning early in life. They affect how you act with others, your partner, your child, your coworkers. How permanent are they? Well, they stay with us over time, and we use them in different types of situations. They're biologically based. We know they run in families. No single gene causes these traits, and scientists think they won't probably find an actual single gene for them. These tendencies are turning out to be not simple, but complicated, and they are genetically related tendencies, not destiny. You won't keep these throughout your life without change. They can be changed, but they are genetically related. These traits are better at predicting what you will not become rather than what you will become. They appear in different degrees. Some are more dominant than others. Some appear in the very early years, others after age 5, and even others arrive in the teen years. So it's important to learn about temperament because you have temperament, your partner has temperament, your baby has temperament, and knowing our temperament helps us understand ourselves and others and to parent more effectively. Now we're going to talk in more detail about the temperament traits. What do the high and low versions of these traits look like and feel like in a young child? When it comes to activity, there are 2 types. There's the low activity child who is laid back, content to watch others be active around him or her. And then there's the high activity child. These children start out being the squirmers, and as babies they wave their arms and kick their legs and wriggle their bodies nonstop. There is the concept of adaptability. Children who are low in adaptability find it hard to move from one part of their day to the next. Those who are high in adaptability transition from one activity to the next with no problem. They accept your leadership and easily go from sleep to wake, from house to car, and from playtime to bath time. There's a trait called approach. Children who are low in approach are your shy children. They're very tentative in new situations, very uncomfortable in new situations. On the other hand, there are what we call high approach children. These children are very enthusiastic about new people and new situations. They seem very bold. When it comes to distractibility, some children don't easily stop what they're doing, no matter how enticing the distraction might be. These children are low in distractibility. The children who are high in distractibility are easily sidetracked from one thing to another. There are children who are mellow and calm, and we call these children low on intensity. The children who are high on intensity These are your big responders. They squeal delightedly with happiness and they shriek with despair. When it comes to persistence, those who are low in persistence, they give up easily. When they're learning how to walk, if they fall down, they might not get up and try again for 2 or 3 days. Those who are higher in persistence, they continue to do what they want, even when they're faced with obstacles. And these are the children, when they're learning to walk, stand up, and when they fall down, they stand up again, and when they fall down, and they just keep going until they've got it mastered. There are some children who are serious and more difficult to please. We call these children low on positivity. They find it hard to have a positive attitude when they experience a setback. On the other hand, there are children who are just generally sunny and cheerful. That's their nature, and they're very resilient in the face of setbacks, and those are the children who are high on positivity. When it comes to regularity, there are some children who it's very difficult to predict when they're going to be hungry or tired, and they are low on regularity. On the other hand, there are some children who seem to have internal clocks that keep them on a predictable schedule, and they don't like to deviate. When it comes to sensitivity, there are some children who are just blissfully unaware of things that bother others, and they don't easily pick up on interpersonal signals. On the other hand, there are some children who are just super sensitive, and they react strongly to even mild lights, mild sounds, mild textures, tastes, and pain. These children are profoundly distressed by things like thunderstorms or wet diapers. There are some children who have a combination of traits, and that's what makes each child unique. And we're just going to cover for a few minutes here some typical combination of traits in children. There is the exuberant child. This child is loud, intense, and somewhat insensitive to the people that are around them. There is also what we call the highly reactive shy child. This consists of about 20% of children. These children are good in school, they're obedient, they're compulsive, they don't like to make mistakes, they're very predisposed to be anxious and worried. But their teen years are not very bad because they're very afraid of making a mistake and they don't test the limits. On the other hand, there's what's been called the Teflon child. This child is really easy to get along with. Nothing seems to faze them. And parents don't tend to give them very much in terms of setting limits. But in the teen years, because they are not used to taking parental advice, it just bounces off them during their teen years, and they're more reckless and cause their parents more worry.